Trips and Traps, Februari 11th edition, 2016. Richard Migliore, Travis Stone. We were just saying it's cold outside. It might be even colder in here as we look at another week of racing.
We could hang meat in here. It's like a meat locker. I'm waiting to see Rocky Balboa come and pound on some sides of beef. But I like the races we have to talk about. I think there's one very obvious one, and then a couple of subtle trips, horses that I'll definitely be following back.
I'll tell you what warms anybody up is having winning tickets. We'll see if we can maybe put some people onto some winning tickets. Let's start with the race. Last weekend, the second race on Februari the 6th. We're going to take a look at a Ragga Night in this maiden race going 2 turns. Big field in this spot. The betting was fairly competitive as well. Ragga Night's number 4 in the blue with the yellow star. There he is right there. Breaks pretty well in this spot. It's what happens from there that's of question.
Yeah, I think, Jose Ortiz chose to take back. And at this point, I question the wisdom of that, Travis. You've got 4 horses stacked up outside of you. You don't want to give away your position at this point. And he had to take him back out of the spot. And you could see he had his head up in the air. He changed leads awkwardly. Now, I know some people look at this and go, well, the winner came from behind him. But it was how they got to those positions. The winner got outrun naturally. Ragga Night, he got taken back.
First off, Ragga Night's better than what he showed in this spot. His debut was pretty good. He ran a good number. He got a little bit rank in his second start. Now, this is 2 races in a row he gets rank. A little bit rank coming out of the gate. But like you said, when you give up that position, you're giving up such an advantage. We were talking about this the other day in the office. So many times these riders, they don't recognize the fact that when you break well like that, you sometimes just have to go and take what the race gives you.
Well, and again, I think you're using more energy getting back out of that spot and just in that wrestling match. Now, I'm not saying you have to send him, although I think I would have been inclined to go forward to make sure I held my position. But you don't want to have to grab the horse, and now you've expended energy going backwards instead of getting your position going forwards. And now he's going to jump into the race, in my estimation, in the middle, and kind of middle moves widest of all on the inner track, and the winner is following his wake right now.
What's interesting is when you look at Trips and Traps, you always have to not only consider what sort of trouble they had or whatever subtle incidences occurred throughout the race, but then you want to see them finish up okay. He was trying to collapse the race on the far turn and put in a winning move. It's really hard to do that when, A, you've taken yourself out of the game early, you're a little bit ranked, and then you make this 4-wide move, which, as you talk about so often on the inner track, is death.
You just have to, and my feeling is you have to be so much the best. Now he's a bit green, too. He doesn't change leads. That doesn't help his cause. But I think between being wrangled back early, making that premature middle move, and then finally changing to his right lead late, I think all in all, this was a better race than it looks. And now I'll be honest, and I'll be fair here. I think a Ragga Night's a horse we want to also look for when we get back to the main track, because I think some horses that tend to get more keen going 2 turns because they kind of jump out of the gate and then the pace moderates, where 1 turn they kind of keep a momentum down the backstretch. This horse might be better 7/8 or even a 1-turn mile.
His running line is going to look worse than the video indicates. It's going to be a good price next time out. A horse to consider as we move on to the 4th race, same day. Now, you said before coming on air, this is a not-so-subtle trip. This is going to be Jaeger breaking from post 3, circling it early because he gets into trouble soon after the start. This was Jaeger's 2nd start in North America, and it's not how you want races to start.
No, and again, underscoring just how important starts are, no matter what the distance of a race. He kind of hopped and scrambled out of the gate and then got squeezed back. And again, it's very obvious. I mean, Ray Charles could see the trip this horse had. But I think it just shows you how difficult it is to be wide around the entire far turn. You have to be so much the best.
David Aragona on Trips and Traps on this day showed Jaeger's first North American start in December, and he was sort of the same thing, a little bit wide, did a little bit of running. He definitely took a step forward in here, but man, it's tough when you have to go wide on both turns on the inner track. Yeah,
I've always said that. If I'm going to be wide on the first turn, I want to save every inch of ground on the second, and conversely, if I'm on a closer that I know I'm going to have to put in the clear, I'm going to save every inch of ground I can on the first turn. You need to save ground at least 1 turn. Now he gets to march into the race too soon once he lost his cover, no kickback in his face. And he is keen. He's basically dragging Harry Hernandez up into the race now. But I think he'd have been much better off just keeping him covered up. You've already been dealt the bad hand.
Right, so here's Jaeger. I'm also going to circle Prophet's Cat, the eventual winner in the pink. Andy talks about this a lot, and it's so key. You can watch trips in isolation and focus on only one horse, but when you can look at the trip relative to what the winner runs, you actually learn a lot more about how the race unfolded. In this case, Prophet's Cat works out a perfect trip, actually travels 37 less feet than Jaeger does, which is about 4 lengths or so. You can see Jaeger making this 4-wide move. When you compare those two trips together, man, Jaeger ran a big race.
He ran a big race. I mean, he actually passed Prophet's Cat while Prophet's Cat's waiting patiently, saving ground, saving horse under Taylor Rice. Yeager's making that big, wide, sweeping bid, and it had to show up at some point, and he was only beaten a short head, and he got to lugging in a little bit here, and I still think he had a chance to get it at one point, but I think him just laying in that little bit because of the trip he had, maybe tiring a bit, cost him.
If you're serious about handicapping races in New York, you have to take advantage of the Trackist data on NYRA.com, where you can learn how many feet traveled per horse, and you can get a comparison of truly how wide they were. 4 lengths is a big deal when you're talking about a 2-turn race on the dirt. Yeager's going to get bet next time out. This trip's a little bit more noticeable, but we thought it was important to sort of compare Profits Cat's trip comparison to him, and then how you can see those subtle differences in trips throughout.
Well, and again, I thought it was a good race from an educational standpoint where people can look at it and see, well, that's absolutely the trip you don't want, particularly on the inner track.
Race number 10, same day. Colonel Jen's going to break from the inside. This is Colonel Jen's second time start. Mike Luzzi is aboard. It's going to find a little bit of trouble early on. Take us through the first few strides of Colonel Jen here.
Well, and she causes all her own trouble, and it's something I like to talk about. Young horses especially run to empty space. There's a lot of empty space inside of you out of the 6-furlong little tiny chute there on the inner track. And she basically just ducked in towards the gap, and Mike had to correct her. And you're going to see better on the pan shot how much it costs her because he does have to correct her. Otherwise, she's going to go ahead and crash into that little temporary rail. Watch her head here. You see he's got to correct her there, correct her again, pulling her head out to the clear, and it costs her a lot of momentum off the break and any chance of any position, and I think this filly subtly ran very good, and you're going to see her finish extremely well.
What's interesting when you talk about lightly raced horses on debut, you want to see them run a little bit. She did that. She showed a little bit of early ability in her first career start, and she shows it again here. She took another forward step despite the fact she had a little bit of trouble. You have to think that, and I thought here as well, maybe getting a little kickback down inside a little bit. She's trying to show a little bit of ability, and we're going to see as the race unfolds from here, she does show a little bit of run late in the game.
No, she really does, and I think once she finally settled and got out of that kickback, and right here, Mike's having to get after her to kind of, continue to go forward, but then he gets stymied just a little bit as the 3-horse moved on his outside, or I'm sorry, I couldn't see what number that was outside in the blue. The 3-horse was in front of him, and she kind of loses momentum here, and I think more from the kickback, but watch when she gets in the clear. I think she finishes subtly well. Now, I know this wasn't a great race, Travis, but how do you rate that? I mean, she's bound to hook another field like this.
Yeah, we have races like this throughout the winter. We have one today. Here we're taping this on a Thursday. These races come up and you have to be able to assess, even though it was a lesser quality race on paper and on the racetrack, they still pay 5-1. It doesn't matter what the quality of the race is.
Well, exactly. Now you can see she's actually really finishing, I thought, with good interest. And I think this is a filly now. She's had 2 sprints. If she stretches out, I'm going to like her even more. But I think even if she comes back sprinting, I kind of like her off of this trip.
Yeah, she's got potential to move forward, and you're probably going to get a bit of a better price, too, because that's another one of those subtle trips that's not going to show up on the comment line. No obvious trouble, no obvious comment line that's going to make people better next time out. Moving on to the first race the next day on Sunday, February the 7th. We're going to take a look at Tis Something Royal. She's breaking from the inside here with the pink and the blue cap. This is her here. She's going to break from the rail. This is a first-time starter for Linda Rice. Now, we've talked about Linda Rice a lot. Her firsters do okay, but they really move up with second career starts. Tis Something Royal ran okay early on here.
She really did, and you can see she kind of ran away from horses a bit there. Now watch how she starts to climb, and look at her expression, her demeanor as that kickback's hitting her. She's climbing, she's pinning her ear, she's really unhappy with that. She's never experienced this before. Even if you've worked the horse in behind horses in the morning, they're not prepared for the kind of kickback that comes back in the afternoon. It comes back much harder, and obviously more horses in front of you. And it took her a while to settle, and I really think that this filly was running with the emergency brake on most of the race.
Tis Something Royal also is breaking from the inside. First-time starters from the inside, that can sometimes be tricky, too.
Well, and especially she looked like a pretty big filly from what I could see, and she didn't look like she was going to be very handy, and she wasn't. And now she's going to run away from horses a little bit here. And you can see the 3-horse stumbled because she got squeezed a bit. That was Warrior's Diva. And she didn't really show any run. I thought what was interesting about Tis Something Royal, though, was that she actually started hitting her best stride, to me, inside the last 8.
First-time starters, going to their second career start is one of my favorite bets in racing because all you have to do is pick up on a little bit of ability or a little bit of talent, and they take such a big step forward second time out, whereas the rest of the public often dismisses them. This feels like a horse that can do a little bit of running, shows a little bit of talent, and is going to take that move forward second time out.
I think she's going to be so much more clued in mentally, and I think she did show flashes of ability. I mean, Jose's getting after her here to keep her running through that kickback. I think she got a ton of education, and you're going to see when she kind of finally sifts out a little bit. I thought she really found her best stride inside the 8th pole. I think this filly's going to improve immensely her second start.
Linda Rice is a 10% trainer first time out. Her numbers move way up second time out when you combine that trainer statistic with the fact that this horse showed this ability as we've seen on this replay. And you're going to see her come into the picture a little bit late in the game. There she is there. She's finishing okay. She's one to take a look at next time.
Yeah. And again, subtly. I don't think there's anything that's jumping off the screen at you that screams that this filly, ran huge. But I think she showed enough where I know that I'll be playing her back.
But you talk about subtle. That's what's key in when you're talking about horse playing, though, is because the obvious trouble and the obvious situations horses find themselves in, everybody sees it. It's when you can dive deeper into these replays and pick up those subtle trips that you can really score out.
Well, I mean, I would think you're still going to get, you bet about 3 to 1 on her first time. You're probably going to get 3 or 4 to 1 on her second time, and I think that's a very square price, where a horse like Jaeger, he'll come back and he'll be 8 to 5 or better.
Right. That's Trips and Traps. Richard Migliore, Travis Stone, comments, Trips and Traps at NYRAinc.com. We'll see you back next week.